I think when the debate on the so-called one China common market is more on the economic effect than on the so-called sovereignty effect. The economic effect basically is on how would that have the influence on our job market, for example, and the various sectors, their opportunity to work and also the wages. So those are the common complaint or the arguments, whether the the smaller country versus bigger country, and talking about our capability to have our economic sovereignty for our economic policy as well as social policy. So those are the classic debate about this. And interestingly enough, that the Ma Ying-jeou, facing those challenges, he started to say that no, the common market is not going to be realized in like 4 or 8 years. It's going to be the aim for like 30 years. So to a certain extent, Ma Ying-jeou, he wanted to free himself from the charges of those social effects. But at the same time, he also sort of dissociate himself a little bit away from the common market idea. So that was the very interesting development in those debates. But on terms of the sovereignty, I think that is more on the issue about whether you want to negotiate with China on the assumption about the one China. And then Ma Ying-jeou, he believed that the 92 consensus, which in Ma Ying-jeou's his own interpretation is that the 92 consensus with China is one China, and each side can freely interpret what this one China means. But the China side never agreed with this interpretation. So that the issue becomes that if the Ma Ying-jeou, he become the president, he would like to negotiate with China, as he said that based on the 92 consensus, that is on the one China. He believed that a different interpretation.
One China, two systems, which is what the Chinese said to Hong Kong, and then he adds, and two different meanings.
Two different meanings, I think that's what Ma Ying-jeou said.
Yeah. Different interpretation.
And then associated with the Tibetan suppression, that started to remind people is that, look, 1951, Tibet also has a peace agreement with China based on the one China principle, basically. And then look what happened 8 years after that. The China sent military for some reasons to quell the protest there. So how would that result into Taiwan? So that is another very interesting development associated with this Tibetan suppression that started to make some people, at least in Taiwan, wonder about whether this one China that Ma Ying-jeou proposed would really bring the peace across the Taiwan Strait. And so I think the whole debate, and of course the external environment and the development always plays factors. And now this time, in this particular election, interestingly enough, it is like 5 or 6 days before that, the Tibetan, what happened in Tibet, started to play into a very huge consideration in the voters' mind. And also that forced Ma Ying-jeou, he wanted to go up very strongly, that he has to be before the Frank Xie, demonstrate to the Taiwanese people that he is not yielding to China. And then I think for the China side, probably they never realized how the development in Tibet will result into the election in Taiwan like this.
To Tibet, let's also add Hong Kong, because Hong Kong was reabsorbed back into China after the 100-year British lease expired. China promised one country, two systems, and still there is a very free stock exchange in Hong Kong, still a substantial amount of economic freedom. But how do the people of Taiwan view what's going on with the political freedom in Hong Kong in terms of what might happen if Taiwan developed closer ties with China?
I think Taiwan is very wary of the development in Hong Kong, and even, especially we call this self-censorship of the Hong Kong press. And so Taiwan said we are not, the same as Hong Kong. We have been really, we have our own military. One country, two system with Hong Kong is totally different. We have our own military. We're going to, even if we have an association with China, it will be, one country but with equal sovereign. At least this is the premises. So when Ma Ying-jeou talk about the common market, and people say, common market, are you going to, the question you asked earlier about, what happened to your sovereignty? But actually in European model, the common market was based on equal sovereignty. So each member, when you negotiate, it is equal. So that's Ma Ying-jeou's defense. But if we look at Hong Kong, okay, what happened is Hong Kong does have, free association with China, and, in terms, but China also makes sure that its excess of laborers from the countryside would not cross the border into Hong Kong. And when Hong Kong's economy needed a boost, China will release its affluent tourists to help Hong Kong to, to boost its economy. And Taiwan right now is waiting for China to, free its affluent tourists to come to Taiwan. So our economy will, pick up, and we need the tourists anyway. So some people think this is a wishful thinking, but my argument will be because we have a pro-independent sentiment, China will have to accommodate. So that's my argument.
So, Dr. Lai, it seems every country in the world wants to attract affluent tourists, and yet President Chen has resisted having direct air links with China. Mr. Xi has talked about maybe having charter flights, but why not have unlimited tourism from China to get their money and also expose Chinese tourists to a functioning democracy?
Yeah.
I think said that the President Chen resisted the charter flight and also the tourists from China. Probably that is not entirely correct, I have to say, because while I work with the Many Affairs Council officials and also talking to the people in the presidential office, the policy about allowing Chinese tourists to Taiwan, that policy has been set on year 2001. And that number, that is 1,000 tourists a day, and that has been decided and designed during that time. So, and the stalemate really comes out at the negotiation with China. And it's a very, very tough and a very painful negotiation. And China usually will link the negotiation process with the political atmosphere, whether they believe this atmosphere is good so that negotiation could produce some result as a reward of the current political atmosphere or as a punishment against your action. So it is the linkage, the politicization about the negotiation, I believe, that result into the current stalemate. And another very recent example is that since last July, and China unilaterally stopped basically the tourism negotiation, the charter flight negotiation, all of them. And why, probably asking them why they did that. Some of them, they started to say that July is too close to the October for the 17th National Congress, and it's going to be political sensitive time. And then after that, it's close to our legislative election. It's not good. And then right now it's a presidential election. It's not good as well. So I think it is when we really go to the nitty-gritty business about the cross-strait negotiation. Of course, the slogan and the visionary statement, they are all good. But usually, I mean, it takes two to tango. And the Chinese Beijing government's attitude is always one of the very important factors, whether we can actually go on or not.
Okay. One of the great frustrations that the Bush administration and many people in Congress have also expressed with President Chen is that he takes this very strong line on independence, doesn't actually go out and declare independence officially, which probably would cause a Chinese invasion, but he keeps going right up to the line. And so with all this strong rhetoric about independence, which perhaps increases the risk of an attack by China, he has been decreasing defense spending. And a lot of people feel that in the United States feel that's kind of reckless. If you're going to go and keep on poking the tiger in the eye, at least you should have some armor on. At least you should have a big stick so you can, when the tiger comes to bite you, you can hit the tiger back. Let's talk about Mr. Ma's hard rock proposal. Can you explain what he proposes to do about strengthening Taiwan's defenses and what he means by hard rock?
Well, I think, when President Chen did that, a lot of that is for political gain. He knew that if you poke China, you garner the support of the pro-independent forces or votes in Taiwan. So he is using this anti-China stand, but not crossing the line so that it will not, become a real conflict. And China basically has learned how to adjust to Chen's rhetoric. And anything Chen said right now, the Chinese government official will say that's campaign rhetoric. That's political rhetoric. So, we will not, take that into consideration. Yeah. So they have learned that. But I think Chen has to make sure that he doesn't cross the line so that, Americans' position is always there is no unilateral change of status quo by either side. So if Chen's action is defined by American government as a unilateral change of status quo, then if China invaded Taiwan, we will not get support from the United States. So that's what we worry, including the United Nations referendum this time.
And let's just explain what that is. In Taiwan elections, the legislature can put, or the executive can put referenda on the ballot. So there is on this upcoming presidential election, there's going to be a referendum. Should Taiwan apply to join the United Nations under the name of Taiwan? That's the DPP's proposal. And then the KMT came up with a counter proposal to say, should we join, return to take the China seat, which they lost when they got the Mao Zedong government was in the dictatorship in China was awarded that seat. And they say, should we rejoin as Republic of China or any other convenient name, presumably something like Chinese Taipei or something like that. But to be valid, a referendum must have 50% of the voters who vote in the election must vote also in the referendum. And now it appears the KMT, even though it proposed its own UN referendum, is now kind of backing away from that and doesn't seem to really want it. Dr. Lai, could you explain what the politics of these referenda is and what practical effect they might have?
I think this referendum, this is not the launch from the top like the one that in year 2004 from the executive branch. It's actually from the grassroots signature collecting process. So for the DPP's versions, it had 2.72 million signatures. And the KMT versions, the referendum, it also has about 1.5 million at least signatures. So both of them, if you counted it, I think that both of them can break the Guinness record about the referendum collection drive. But in terms of the referendum politics, I think the KMT believe that the referendum is a DPP's ploy to disrupt the whole election and to increase the DPP candidates' opportunity to win. And so the KMT is sort of worried about this referendum. At first, they would like to launch their own referendum in order not to get behind in this process, and then so that they can go on with the election. But then probably at some time they figure, or due to the Chinese pressure, that the KMT decided that they are about to at least passive boycott about the referendum. So that is why a lot of people are skeptical whether those two referendums, DPP's version and KMT's version, both of them can pass in this coming presidential election. But the more legally precise language about the result of the referendum is not that it did not get passed or it did fail, but it did not make the case. It did not affirm a certain outcome because the participation is not enough to make it a case. And I think from the Green Party side, probably they will feel that this has a lot to do with the referendum law, the flow about it, because the threshold is really too high. And that basically makes only the party that's a national mechanisms, like DPP or KMT, but other NGO or other people's organization, they just simply do not have the power and the machinery in order to make their referendum to be passed.
Secretary of State Rice very strongly denounced the DPP's proposed referendum to say that Taiwan should apply to join the United Nations under the name of Taiwan. And it seems like her reaction to that, saying, oh, that would be a unilateral change in the status.
And the term American authority uses is provocative, which I protest. I say, don't use that word, because when you use that word, which means China can attack Taiwan, saying we are provoked by Taiwan's action, which is, I mean, actually given by the United States, it is terminology of provocation. But America did put a lot of pressure. I think the KMT's position right now is do not support the DPP's referendum, support the KMT referendum, but also tolerate those who do not vote for the referendum. But they didn't say do not support. They didn't say vote for the KMT referendum. They said support our referendum. But tolerate those who do not go to vote for the referendum.
So is that their quiet way of saying don't vote? Don't vote for either one.
And I think if we look at the two referendum together with the legislative election 2 months ago, which didn't have the sufficient number, so I'm also pessimistic about these two referendum getting enough people to vote and passing the threshold. So it is almost putting there, I think, wastes a lot of people's time for the signature collection and being politicized, and now it's not going to get passed.
One of the flaws of Taiwan's democracy has been that corruption has been a bipartisan problem, as it sometimes is in the United States too. Could you talk about what Mr. Ma has said he would do about corruption in his own party, in the KMT, and whether he followed through and accomplished any reforms against corruption?
Well, I think first of all, if we talk about compare Taiwan's democracy to it's very much like America. Campaign is very expensive, but we do not have the habit of individual contribution to candidate. So a candidate spent a lot of money campaigning and win an office. I mean, he has to gain something in order to pay back all the loan he got in order to win this office. So that's where the corruption starts. It's in the legislature, and right now we have this new legislature since February 1st. We have the number, and so each one become more powerful than before. From 225 right now we have only 113, and few members can dominate a committee. So they can be very much involved in any kind of financial committees, transportation committee, all kinds of budgeting that they can control. So it would be very difficult, I think, even for Ma, if he became president, to control his own party, because all these people said, hey, we spend all this money, getting elected. At least we need to get our, money's worth.
So
right?
if you're running for the legislature, for the legislative yuan, you're saying that, and you want to buy an ad on television or in the newspaper, all the money just comes out of your pocket. You have to tell your wife, no groceries for a few weeks. I need to buy a newspaper ad.
At least, I mean, you might be able to get some business donation if they, happen to be, you're going to help that business, that help that particular sector. But Taiwan's individual contribution, we do not have that culture. So that would be, very difficult to raise that money.
An important lesson for those American viewers: lack of campaign contributions causes corruption. Dr. Lai, the Democratic Progressive Party started off as a reform party that was successfully pushed for democratization against the one-party rule of the KMT, which is now universally acknowledged as having been very corrupt at the time. How is it that the DPP, when in power, has itself had so many problems with corruption, going all the way up to the president's wife?
Well, I think, yes, there are the corruption allegations against the First Family and also other political appointees in the DPP government, and some of them, they are DPP members. And I'm not going to describe whether to compare the degrees of DPP's corruption versus the KMT corruption, because corruption is a corruption. But when we talk about the ruled out, the possibility of corruption, I think it is important that in legislative yuan, until today, that the clean anti-corruption, the legislative package proposed by the DPP, and at least that has not been passed. And the KMT, when mind you, he was a chairman, he said that he promised, or in the KMT would like to pass their own version of the anti-corruption legislative package. But whether it is due to the inability of mind you to control his KMT colleagues in the legislative yuan, or for some other reasons, that KMT also failed to pass the the campaign or the anti-corruption reform package. So that the problem, I think, right now, if we really want to tackle this in a systematic way, I personally believe that the passage about those legislative bills are very important. And according to Dr. Yan, it seems that right now KMT controls 3/4 of the majority in legislative yuan, and every one of them would like to get their money's worth. It seems that the future for this package to be passed is even further bleak. But I still have the strong belief in Taiwan its own democratization process. That for some time, if because we have the examples in the past that like the current sliding down of our legislative members into half, that was considered undoable in year 2005, but
and
we got it.
The legislature was reformed so that the number of seats was cut in half.
That's right. That's right.
And mostly changed to single-member districts instead of two-member districts.
Exactly. So that with that miracle happening in year 2005 at that time, and I still am very optimistic about the future reform in legislative yuan.
Let's just hypothesize that when the election results start coming in, we'll know the results 48 hours from now. Suppose the DPP loses the presidential election and loses it by a large margin, maybe 10% or more. And then they've had a terrible defeat in January in the legislature, now a big defeat in the presidential election. What does the DPP do next to re-examine itself and reform itself politically to have a viable future?
First of all, based on what I observe right now, I do not think that it will be a landslide defeat. Okay. It will be very close. It will be very close. So the difference probably within 5%. And of course, the campaign failure for the DPP a loss is a loss. So the DPP has to face a problem that why the voters abandon the DPP. And especially, I think this election is more about the perception about DPP rather than the approval of the KMT. And so the DPP's process, I think that would be connected with if they lost the election. The new chairman election will be at the end of this coming May. So from the March the 22nd all the way to the end of May, I think the internal debate within the DPP about the future direction and its past deeds definitely will receive a lot of coverage and a review. And also associated with some the current leadership. I think there are probably generational changes probably would also happen.
Okay. Dr. Yan, let me ask the question on the opposite side. Let's suppose that Mr. Ma wins the election by 1 vote or by 3 million votes. Then he's the president. He has a supermajority in the legislature. Are there dangers for him of trying to go too far in pushing the KMT agenda, or do you think he will have the ability to be a unifying president, even if he wins, if his party has everything?
I think he himself, as a person, I think he wants to be, reconciliatory. I think he will try to reach to the independents or even, the Green Party members, and maybe invite some of them into the cabinet. But the question is, right now the legislature is controlled by the KMT, and the Speaker of the House of the legislature did not have a very good relation with him. So whether he can, force his way, forces any type of reform or any kind of new type of cabinet outlook, makeup acceptable to the legislature. I think that would be, to see whether he does have the political skill to do that. He might want to appeal to the voters who did not vote for him and ask them, to support him to reform the KMT. This will be the problem if he wins. He has to face his own party. The challenge is not from the DPP, but from within his own party. People already have some aberration about this dominant, majority. How do you get people feel comfortable that this dominant majority, this so-called the new monster in the legislature, will behave? I think that's probably, if he lost the election, that would be, people's worry about that. If he won, he still have to face that.
Okay, let's look at that possibility. Suppose Mr. Xi pulls off an upset, and partly on the theory which he's using in the campaign that, boy, you just gave the KMT the whole legislature practically. You need to have a balance of power instead of having one-party rule. But yeah, we've had several years of people would say frustrating gridlock, and the government not being able to move forward. We have with a DMT president and a KMT majority in the legislature. How would President Xi, if he wins, be able to work effectively with an overwhelmingly KMT legislature?
I think Frank Xi, he already said that if he became the president, then he will try to work with sort of like a grand coalition government to include some of the KMT or even other parties member to be in his cabinet. Of course, he also said that he's considered to consult with the KMT about the premiership. Basically, so that the Frank Xi, he knows that if he becomes the president, the 3/4 of majority in the Congress, and the people are so tired of the split government, the stalemate in the past, and he still wants to win the re-election in year 2012. So I think the only way for him to pull off an effective management of the government is to work with KMT, and there's no other way around, and he realized that.
The vice presidency. In the United States, of course, presidents, as you know, choose their vice presidents. They say because, oh, what if I have a heart attack?
Yeah.
And what if I'm like
One
William
breath
Henry?
away.
Yeah. What if I'm like William Henry Harrison and I don't wear a coat to my inauguration, and then I catch pneumonia and die a month after I'm inaugurated?
Yeah.
But in practice, they often choose the vice president to help them win the election, and not really think in the classic example of John F. Kennedy, for whom Lyndon Johnson really did decisively help him win the election, but on the other hand, probably wasn't the kind of president that John F. Kennedy would have wanted to bequeath to the United States when he wasn't able to finish his term because he died. Tell us about the vice presidents in this race. Are they people who are chosen for electoral advantage only, or are they people who could step in to serve as president?
I think both are very strong. The Ma's vice presidential candidate was the vice presidential candidate of KMT 8 years ago. He was the prime minister, premier before. He served as the minister of economic affairs and also on the economic planning committee. Was a legislator as well. So his background, his resume is very good, and he's very experienced and steady. And more importantly, I think he complements Ma in terms of his being a technocrat, having this strong strength in the economic development issue, whereas Frank Xi's partner, Mr. Su, is also very capable. I think if you want me, I would prefer him over Frank Xi. But both of them are lawyers. Both the background are very similar. They're career politicians. They came through the election. So if Frank Xi got elected, I think and something happened, Mr. Su become the next president. Suits fine, no problem. I mean, we are not having. I mean, we don't have a Dan Quayle here. Yeah. So don't worry about that.
Okay. Dr. Lai, anything you'd like to add to that?
And I think basically I agree with what Dr. Yan said, that both vice presidential candidates, in the past they have a proven background that they're able to manage things. So that I'm not worrying about whether the first one really had, for some reason, had to go away, and the second one, whether they have the capability to succeed.
Okay. I want to make sure that viewers who are watching this on the internet or on our Channel 12 broadcast know where they can go to get more information about Taiwan. Can you quickly tell us about Taiwan Think Tank and give the address for the website?
I think the Taiwan Think Tank is an independent research institution, and politically is leaning toward the progressive, so that the relationship with many of the DPP members usually has been good. So that the Taiwan Think Tank, its web address is www.taiwanthinktank.org.
Great. And Dr. Yen, could you also tell us about how to get...
Our institute, basically specializing in two areas, one international, one mainland China studies. So I'm with the international side. And our website, with the university is www.nccu, that's my university, .edu.tw, and you can go to the Research Institute, Institute of International Relations.
And there are some English language materials available on the website,
yeah.
including some of the things I've read were actually very sophisticated analysis of American elections from a foreign perspective.
Yes, we do. We also, have access, connecting to some other website as well, so that will help.
Where else, for people who want to follow Taiwan issues, where are some other good resources for people to go to on the web?
I think basically if you want to follow the election, go to the two candidates, the two-party candidate and the party's website. And the DPP website is very easy to remember, www.dpp.org.tw. And then you can get a lot of things.
www.dpp.org.tw.
That's right.
Okay. And how about the KMT website?
I don't know. I'm not a KMT member. So, but I do think, the Taiwan's English newspaper help. www.taipei.com. TaipeiTimes.com.
And also China Post, which has an English language edition.
Both of these are very good.
And I enjoy reading both of those in English.
Well,
as we're taping this and wrapping up, we don't know which party's going to win, although we'll have a segment put on giving you the election results that will come on seconds after I'm done as you see this. But we actually do know the winner of the election, because the winner of the election is the people of Taiwan. They are voting once again in a free election, and there is no doubt that whoever wins, the current president will give way to the duly elected, legitimately chosen, freely chosen new president of Taiwan. So Taiwan is a winner not only for its own democracy, but for the wonderful example that it is setting for democracy throughout all of Asia and throughout all the world. Thank you for watching. Good night.